حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا، من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم، وإذا أراد الله بقوم سوءا مرض الله وما لهم من دونه من وال. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ar-Ra'd, ayah number 11, indeed Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. And when Allah wills a people's punishment, there can be no averting it, and they will find besides Him no protector. Dear brothers and sisters, what we see, what we're hearing day in, day out, what's happening in Palestine is very, very difficult. It hurts us. It hurts us in so many ways. Some of us may even not want to watch the news for a short time just because can't handle so much trash news so often. But this is the reality. This is our reality, and this is their reality as well. And because of this, many of us Muslims, we start to build up this anger, this pent-up aggression, right? We get angry. We constantly seeing this, and nothing gets better. It only gets worse. And so we feel this anger building up within us. And so what do we do with that anger? Most Muslims, what they end up resorting to is organizing a protest and attending said protest. And what do? In these protests, we channel our anger through the protest itself, right? We march for hours. You chant and yell at the top of your lungs for hours. And when protest is said and done, after a few, you get in your car, you go home, and what's happened? That fire in your belly, it's gone. It's been put out. It's no longer that anger that is calmed down. That pent-up aggression has blown away. And unfortunately, what happens with most Muslims? They become dormant. They do nothing up until the next protest is organized. And the cycle repeats. This happens every year, every Ramadan, every time Palestine is attacked, or other countries are attacked, Muslim countries. And nowadays, with what's happening, there are more and more protests happening pretty much almost daily. And Muslims are going constantly attending these protests, believing some sort of change is going to happen by yelling at the top of your lungs and letting out your anger. And this is where it lies a problem. See, I'm not telling anyone do not attend protests. I'm not saying that. If you feel the need to attend a protest, by all means, go ahead. I'm not here to tell you that you should. And I'm not here to tell you that protest is halal or haram. I'm not going to go into that either. That is not my business, and I do not care to even dive there. The problem I have is when Muslims think that protests are the only thing they can do, that it is the least they can do, as they say, quote unquote. And then they resort to doing absolutely nothing in between these protests. For some reason, we're expecting change. We're expecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help when all we do is these protests. It doesn't really make sense, but the question is, how did we get here? How did we get here as Muslims? How did our ummah get into this situation? I don't mean politically. I'm not here to talk about history and all that. I'm talking about Islamically, how did we end up here? The gist of it is that generations ago, we started to leave Islam. With each generation, we got further and further away from Islam. We got further and further away from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this has bore the rotten fruit that we have in front of us today. You see, the enemies of Islam, they have not changed their ways in the 1400 years they've been attacking Islam. Since the time of Prophet ﷺ, they've been always on the offensive. This has never changed. Even when the Muslims were the dominant force during the Khilafahs, even when there was peace between non-Muslims and Muslims under the Muslims, the non-Muslims still found a way to attack from the outside, right? This was always their thing. They've always done this. So we cannot squarely put the blame on them saying, well, they're doing this to us. They're doing this because this is what they will always do. This is what they have always done, and they will continue to do, right? So what has changed? It's us. Us, we have changed. We have left the deen of Allah, and this is the end result of it. And I guarantee you, most Muslims do not like to even admit this. They don't want to admit, first of all, that the real reason they go to protest is to let out their anger. Okay? That's one thing. They will not admit that the real reason they're going is because they have anger, they don't know what to do with it. So they use the protest as a form of channeling their anger. I'm not saying that's necessarily a wrong thing. It's better than committing acts of violence, of course. But if that's all you use to channel your energy into, then that's a problem. Number two, Muslims don't like to admit that the real reason we're here is because of our lack of Islam. I mean, subhanAllah, how many Muslims who are getting up early for those protests, the ones that start early in the morning, the ones that start at 8 or 9 a.m., you have to get up early for that, right? You gotta get up, you gotta get ready, you gotta have your sign ready, right? You gotta dress up accordingly, right? So people are getting, and then they have to get there early to beat the traffic to get good parking, right? So they have to get up easily, 6 a.m., easily, right? How many of those Muslims are going to the Masjid al-Fajr first? I mean, how much early do they even have to wake up just to go to the Masjid al-Fajr? How many of them are even praying Fajr before they go into the protests? How many of them are even committing to the Salah itself? How can we sit here asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help when we can't even commit to the basics of Islam? The basics. And we have the audacity to sit there begging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His help when we aren't even adhering to what the simple commands? I mean, subhanAllah, this is the end result. I mean, how many of the Muslims are there who are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for justice, run these dishonest, cheating-like businesses? Right? How many Muslims there are a part of or running businesses that cheat people, that are dishonest, they lie? But then they ask for fairness and justice from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we want to adhere to ourselves. I mean, this is the problem with the Muslims. It starts from us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, what is He saying? He's saying He will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves. What is within ourselves? Our heart, our mind, our soul, our ruh. These are what's within ourselves. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying we need to change ourselves first. We need to be better Muslims. We need to adhere, right? The solution of what's happening around the world, and not just Palestine, Kashmir, Pakistan, Afghanistan, every Muslim country where there is oppression, the solution is outlined and clear. It's not vague. It's clear in the Quran and Sunnah. It is all there. It's there in the Seerah of Prophet. It's all there. And we adhere to none of it. And what are we expecting to gain? I mean, we've been doing this for generations, for decades. I mean, how many Muslims have been protesting from the time of the Iraq War and up until today, and what's happening in Palestine, and nothing has changed. There has been no help from Allah in these instances. Why? Because we don't want to look at Islam as a solution. We won't look at anywhere else. We want to look for quote unquote easy solutions. But these aren't solutions. Protesting, good or bad, doesn't matter. But it's not a solution, and you have to admit that. Only times protests have ever been a solution, FYI, a lot of Muslims like to use the Black History movement, Civil Rights movement, as an example of why protests work. We cannot, it's not a good example because that was a domestic issue. That was an issue happening here locally to the people locally, right? Protesting what's happening in Palestine, it's not a country. Our country doesn't even have that much direct involvement. They're providing aid, but there's no direct involvement. They're not there deploying troops there. So what are you protesting really? Who are you protesting against? And you go and ask the Muslims in these protests, and you won't find a single unified answer. Everyone has their different reasons. Oh, I'm here to spread awareness, or I'm here to, to educate people. I'm here to, to protest what's happening against there. Oh, I'm here to protest the politicians here. Everyone has a different reason. In Islam, there's only one unified reason when we're fighting for justice. One unified reason. Right? We can't even be unified in the protest, but yet, for some reason, we expect change to happen. Everyone has a different concept of change then. How can that possibly work? So, the solution is, like I mentioned, is clear. It's outlined in the Quran and Sunnah. And it starts with ourselves. Right? It starts with our own hearts, our own mind. We have to adhere to Islam. We have to actually get to the Salah itself. So many of us in today's ummah, today's world, so many of us are missing Salah so regularly. Whether we just never wake up for Fajr, whether we have a lapse in time and miss Dhuhr because of work or school, Asr goes by very quickly. I mean, so many of us go through this so often, and it's very sad, and we treat it like it's no big deal. And the hadith are very clear that the mu'min, he treats even the smallest sins like it's a mountain about to fall on his head or a boulder about to fall on his head. Whereas the hypocrites, they treat the sins as if it's just a fly on his nose. They just brush it off. This is a hadith in Bukhari, I believe. Right? And so where do we lie in this when it comes to Salah? The one of the most fundamental of Islam, one of the most fundamental obligations of a Muslim. How do we treat our Salah? How many of us, we rush through the Salah? And when the Salah is over, how many of us even stick around to do the Sunnah? Or even Nafl? If we want to see change, if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, we have to get to the Salah and not just the Fard. We should be doing the Sunnah, we should be doing Nafl, we should be doing as much as we can, asking for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. Showing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala we need Him. Right? If we are in and out of our Salah in 2 minutes, then we are not showing that we need Him. We're just showing that we're just merely fulfilling an obligation and nothing more. Salah is that connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You can make all the dua you want, but if you don't have the connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what are you really doing? Right? What's the good of a dua if there is no salah to connect you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So we have to make dua as well. Dua is extremely important and should never be undermined. I don't know why it is in today's society so many Muslims don't want to even look at dua. There was a teacher recently who was talking about how a female came up to her and how she she was having difficulties in her own personal life. Not talking about any grand scheme of what's happening in the world, just her own personal life. And when she came up to the teacher, she said, "What can I do? And please don't tell me I need to make dua." Those were her words. Please don't tell me I need to make dua. They don't want to even look at this obvious solution that starts right from within us to ask Allah for help. Why should Allah help us if we're not going to even ask Him for our help? I mean, subhanAllah, what kind of arrogance is that? And this isn't just one sole case. This is a lot of Muslims think this way. We think that, Allah knows what my needs are. I don't need to ask Him. No, you have to ask Him. Allah knew the needs of Prophet and the Sahaba when they were in the most difficult of times, yet they still made dua asking for help on those same exact matters. All the Prophets did, all the Sahaba did. So why do we think that we don't need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help? We need to, we always need to, whether it be a personal issue or a larger collective matter, right? What's happening overseas or wherever. We have to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the help. So when it comes to the solution, going back to the solution, it starts with, like I said, ourselves, adhering to Islam, the Salah, Quran, obviously, all these things matter. Us adhering to Islam, we should be running good businesses, honest businesses, not to other people, whether it be Muslim or non-Muslim, it doesn't matter. You cannot do this in your business. Then the next step is your home. We still exited the home. We're still inside the home now. Now you establish Sharia in your home. What does that mean? It means that your family is also adhering to the Sharia. They're also adhering to Islam. That includes your spouse, your children. How many Muslims have I seen today that come to the masjid for Isha and their kid never comes to the masjid? I don't mean a 5-year-old child. I'm talking about a 15-year-old or 18-year-old or 20-year-old and never comes to the masjid. Not once. How many of them? I've seen so many examples of parents who are regular to the masjid. The mother wears a hijab and the father has a big beard. And the kids don't even know the basics in Islam. I mean, literally, they don't even have the knowledge of basics in Islam. I ran a youth group for 5+ years, alhamdulillah. And it blew my mind that teenagers in high school who barely even knew who Prophet ﷺ was. They barely even knew how to pray. They didn't know Quran. Right? These were Muslims. And I see their parents at the masjid. And this is just a small youth group. Imagine how much worse it gets when you look at the wider audience of Muslims in America or anywhere else. How many Muslims are not even adhering to Islam in our own households? That the children are sitting there playing video games or listening to music or doing all these anything but salah. And the salah is not enforced, but academics are enforced. Right? They have to have good grades. But when it comes to salah, please pray your salah. Oh, it's okay if you miss it. I mean, what kind of attitude is this? But this is the reality of so many Muslims. If this is not your household, alhamdulillah. But this is the reality of a lot of Muslim households. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. But there's so many Muslims who don't even know their basics. So many children who do not know their basics. Right? And this goes in multiple ways when it comes to establishing Islam in your home. I cannot go and come here on the minbar and tell the people that your wives and your daughters should be wearing hijab if my own daughter, my own wife don't wear hijab. That is hypocrisy. Right? That is hypocrisy. Yes, I should still relay a message, but if I'm not making sure that this is followed in my home, then this is a problem. Yes, you cannot force your wives or your daughters. You cannot compulsively force them into wearing the hijab. But if they're actively, openly disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in public by not wearing the hijab, this is a problem. Right? There's no debate on whether hijab is required or not. This is people who debate this are people who don't want they don't want to admit that that is required. They don't want to admit that the hijab is fard. Why? Because then that means that the wives and daughters are sinning. They don't want to admit that. So they argue the semantics to try to say that, oh, well, it's, fard, the hijab is not in the Quran. It is unanimously agreed upon for 1400 years that the hijab is a requirement. We have no right to sit there now arguing it all of a sudden. Right? Especially those who don't even have the knowledge to argue it. So my point is that the household needs to have Sharia. Myself and my household, my wife, my husband, my children, the family has to follow Islam, right? They have to understand Islam, they have to be following Islam. Now we can go outside the house. Now we can talk about the community. Now we can talk about the society and the nation, right? And a lot of Muslims have this idea that the protests are a form of dawah, that they are a form of raising awareness of what's happening. And I could argue against it, but let's just look at the reality of things. Let's be honest. Let's take things from a non-Muslim who's passing by and sees such a large protest. What is he seeing, or she, right? They're passing by and they see hundreds of Muslims gathered, mashallah. But what do they see? They see Muslims who wear a kafaya covering their face, waving flags, standing on top of cars, yelling and chanting, and they have no idea what's going on. If anything, they're probably getting scared. Honestly, you're not persuading them into your favor by yelling and chanting and marching. It just doesn't work that way. That's not what protests do, right? It's not about persuading people into your favor. Can it raise awareness? Maybe, yeah. Maybe people are more looking into the issue because of protests. But it's such a small percentage that there are so many more effective ways of raising awareness, of educating people. Simple one-to-one conversations, one-on-one conversations with people can go miles compared to what a protest can achieve in hours. And it's just funny to me that so many people who say this, who say that they're trying to educate and spread awareness through a protest, they will never go back into the workplace talking about what's happening in Palestine. Even the colleagues that they are close to them and that they trust, they will never bring up these issues. So how can you talk about spreading awareness if you can't even talk to people about it? And at the same time, I see many Muslims when they are faced with an opposing view, someone who stands with Israel, for example. Instead of trying to engage in dialogue, they just brush them and say, "Oh, this guy, oh, I don't want to deal with this person. Oh, you're this and that." This is actually not from Prophet's method. Even though the enemies of Islam were attacking him, that never stopped him from engaging in da'wah. Da'wah was always there. It is required as a Muslim. You cannot just simply overlook this aspect in Islam. We have to give that. We have to spread the message. So even in instances of current events, you can still talk about it. You don't have to sit there, going into debates and all that. But just the matter of lives being lost, right? I mean, there's so many statistics out there. It's not hard to show them. There's so many pictures of what's happening in Gaza. It's not hard to show. I mean, I've had this one-on-one conversation with non-Muslims in the past, and I'll end this in just a minute here. But so many times in the past, there was one time I had a conversation with a non-Muslim, someone who I personally knew, and he was just asking me what's happening over in Palestine. I mean, he sees what's happening on the news, but he just wanted to engage my thoughts. And he's saying, I'm telling him that, well, this is what's been happening. They've been attacked for so long and all that. Well, then he's like, well, the other side is also being attacked. Well, I said, well, then look at the pictures. Just Google the pictures. I don't even need to tell you what to Google. Just Google pictures of Gaza and look at pictures of Israel. Tell me who's really being oppressed here. And you cannot argue against that. And they couldn't. And they admitted that, okay, I need to do more research. I've had this happen on several instances. It doesn't take much. But Muslims aren't even willing to engage in this conversation, in this dialogue. Now, if people are still supporting the opposing view, then you can't do much. You've done your part. Your part isn't to persuade people, it's to spread the message, right? The message of Islam, message of the current events, of what's really happening, spreading the truth. Your objective as a Muslim, our objective as a Muslim, is to just spread the message, right? Not to persuade the people. The truth comes to the people through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not any other way. قل قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه انه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Going back to what I said earlier in this book, I'm not here to tell people that they should not go to protests. I'm not here to tell you that it's haram or halal. I'm not interested in any of that. If you want to attend a protest, by all means. But the protest should not be the be end of all. It should not be the start and ending, or the beginning and ending of your work for sake of Allah's content. Right? We should not look for easy solutions. There's never an easy solution in Islam. That's not how it works. Right? Throwing money at the situation isn't going to actually make things better. Yes, you should still give money, but don't expect change by throwing money. Right? Social media might have some small effects, but even that's not easy to get your message through. I mean, social media nowadays is being censored. So it's not the most engaging way either. Sending automated letters to your local politicians also isn't going to do much as you think it will. I can tell you right now, you send an automated letter to them, they'll send an automated letter back to you. And they'll tell you that they're very neutral or they support Israel. That's it. That's all you're going to get in return. So don't think that you're committing to change by doing these easy 5-minute or couple hour ideas. The real change can only come from within ourselves. And when we start to change ourselves, then the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come. And Muslims also, I just want to make this quick note because I see this too often, especially on social media. Muslims have this idea that, Imam Mahdi is going to come and resolve everything for us. I'm sorry, but you do not understand who Imam Mahdi is if this is your belief. This is not how it works. When Imam Mahdi comes, and we don't know when he comes, he might not come in our lifetimes, Allahu Alam when he comes. But when he comes, things will be so much worse than they are. So much worse. And things will be a lot scarier. I promise you, so much more scarier. Because we're talking about around the corner of the jail, and that is a scary, difficult time. I've talked about in my previous schools. This is not a time you want to be alive in. So just keep this in mind, that if we want to change, if we're going to ask Allah for His help, we have to adhere to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما صليت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى ال محمد كما باركت على ابراهيم وعلى ال ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, please help strengthen our iman and make us among the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fitna of the Dajjal. Ya Allah, please help ease the suffering of the Muslims around the world. Ya Allah, please help give victory to the Muslims. Ya Allah, please expose the lies and hypocrisy of the enemies of Islam. Ya Allah, please accept the shuhada of the Muslims in Palestine, in Kashmir, and everywhere else where the Muslims are oppressed. Ya Allah, please forgive us for not doing enough for our Muslim brothers and sisters. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
آمين.
والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله من حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, inshallah. Allah bless all of you, all who are here and all who are watching from the internet. And our Imam, who brought so many things, and when they come in, they prepare that, their thoughts and everything. And Jazakallah for doing that. Sometimes they come from work, and so it's difficult. But Jazakallah, Allah Ta'ala bless you as the month is progressing. That may Allah Ta'ala reward us for the next month coming in, Islamic month. And may Allah Ta'ala reward the people who are sitting here. Instead of some people that say Assalamu alaikum and I'm going. This is not the way in the message. I'm just taking few minutes. I'm not taking a long conversation. Imam has already done that. So make dua for all of you who listen to that. Sometimes we'll tell you things which you may not know. So Jazakallah khair for listening. Assalamu alaikum.